we have been conditioned by society to not talk about our earnings, to not stand up for what we're worth, to basically go along to get along. Have you ever gone into a surface pattern design community, course, Facebook group, looking for some quick answers on how to price your work? Maybe you got a question from a potential client, someone asking, what are your prices for so-and-so job? And you need answers because this is your first inquiry and you're really not sure, or it's so different from what you usually do and you're looking for help. If you've ever done that, you've probably gotten the dreaded "it depends" answer, along with a list of like 400 things that you need to consider before you can possibly give an answer. That's super frustrating. If you came to this video hoping that I'm going to give you some really quick, like boom, 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 it's this many dollars, unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, but I am going to provide you with some numbers and some resources on pricing your work. But the truth of the matter is it really does depend, unfortunately. I like things really, really clear and simple and straightforward. And that's honestly why I tend to avoid this subject. I don't teach pricing because no matter how many jobs I price, it seems like there's not a way to simplify. It really is personal. I mean, we could boil it down to some numbers, and I'm going to talk about some different numbers, but the truth is we should be always working for higher numbers. So if I boil it down, that might keep you stuck. So let's talk first about some traditional factors you need to consider if you're looking at your pricing. I'm going to share with you a number of resources for pricing your work, and most of them are going to want you to learn as much as you can about the job you're committing to. That makes sense, right? It may seem cut and dry, like create art and get paid for it, but it can be important to understand a number of factors. So the first things you might want to learn about is type of agreement. Whether a client wants to license or buy your work is going to make a big difference in pricing. Will it be an exclusive or non-exclusive license is another question if you are going to be licensing your work. You're going to be thinking about the end product when you're thinking about your pricing. How big is the company? What types of products will it be on? How many units are being made? How long will the end product be in stores? You're going to be thinking about the art itself, how complex the art is, how many colors are used. Sometimes these are factors we use to consider. The earning potential of the art are other factors that sometimes you'll be asked about. How long it will or did take you to create the art. How likely is it that you can reuse this art if you're not selling it outright, if you're licensing it, or if you're creating it sort of on commission, but then licensing it? Are you going to be able to use this art again? You want to be thinking about the earning potential. These are all factors that some of these resources will be asking you about or referring to. And also then, most importantly, potentially, is sort of the business basics. How much do you need to make monthly to cover and exceed your costs of living? Knowing your numbers is a very important part of figuring out what pricing is going to work for you, no matter the type of company, the type of client, the type of art. Yeah, it's a lot. That's a lot of things. Some of those things might have, I'm sure, some of those things in that list just created new questions for you. Like you're not sure what some of those terms mean. You're not sure how to find out some of that information, or your client isn't even sure how to give you some of that information. This is why it's not my favorite subject, I'll be honest. The truth is, even before you consider some of those traditional factors, your money mindset is coming into play. So no matter what math, what calculator, what guide tells you is the accurate price or a good range of prices for you to suggest to your potential client for your work, if those don't line up with your beliefs about your worth, you will not be asking for those prices. So for example, if you have mainly sold your art at arts and crafts fairs for like $45 for a canvas, and you've been, at your little booth with your hand painted designs and been selling for $45, and then you get the advice that you should be selling your work for $850 to a bigger company. That money is going to seem a little bit laughable. That's a huge jump between $45 and $850. I'm sure you'd be willing to take much less because it sounds like a major jump. On the flip side, if you have been working for a design studio that caters mostly to the home decor market, and you know that your work has regularly been selling for $1,000 or $1,100, when you look at the prices on Pattern Bank, for example, and see that some people are selling their patterns for $300, you're not going to be in a rush to sign up because that sounds wildly undervalued. Not only does our past experience with this particular industry come into play, but also our life experiences and our thoughts on earning money in general are all caught up when we start talking about pricing. As an industry that is dominated by women, we have been conditioned by society to not talk about our earnings, to not stand up for what we're worth, to basically go along to get along in order to, just kind of take what's given to us. We're not taught to negotiate and toe a hard line. We're taught to take what's given to us. I love that this is really changing, and there are so many people being more transparent about their numbers, both in this industry and other industries, but it really is a slow process that continues to be based on personal beliefs, which aren't easy to shift with an article or a calculator or a YouTube video. And honestly, I've been caught up in some of that too, because I believe in moving forward and pushing our pricing boundaries. But I also am very aware of what the industry standard has been for so long. And unfortunately, that industry standard hasn't really increased in the 20 years that I've been working in this industry, which just isn't fair. And so I don't always feel empowered to say, I want an additional $500 on top of what normally would be asked for, because who am I to push the norms, right? So it is a really complicated subject. Still, it's a very important subject that we do need to address, that we do need to continue pushing boundaries and being more transparent about, which is why my friend Portia Monberg created the Fair Pricing for Surface Design Facebook group, which you probably heard, if you've seen any of my other videos, you probably heard me talk about. And her and Pippa Shaw and I started to talk about resources we could offer within this group. And I felt like rather than offering numbers, I know people just want to have numbers because, you want that quick answer that it depends feels so annoying when you're looking for answers. But rather than just offer numbers, perspective is going to be a big point. If you see that 850 and you're used to 45, you're going to laugh at that 850 and you're not going to use that 850. So you can dig into our videos that we've created on this subject. But before you worry about numbers, which again, I know is easier said than done, because if someone just emailed you asking for your numbers, you're kind of like, I don't have time to take a master class in mindset. But consider these factors to help you align your mindset a little bit. First of all, know the value of your artwork, all right? And we talk a lot about this in the video, but essentially understand that your work does have value. Your work helps sell products. And just because it's quote unquote easy for you, and maybe it isn't easy for you, but it might be easy for you. You might be well practiced in it, but just because something's easy for you, or, oh, it only took me 20 minutes, doesn't mean that it's not extremely valuable. The second thing is learn to negotiate, okay? Again, this is something that we are not trained to do often as women, but it's super important. And I'm not an expert negotiator or anything like that, but as you can see in the video where we discuss this, we talk about a lot of the factors, and those factors revolve around some of those things that traditional pricing factors that we talked about earlier. So you can negotiate various things based on how big the company is, or how many units are being sold, or how long you're going to offer your artwork, or, there's a lot of different factors that can come into play that can help you line up their budget with what you hope to get for your work. And then finally, consider long-term sustainability, all right? So there's two kind of factors of this. Again, you can watch the longer video where we really dive into it, but thinking both about the industry itself, where, pricing something for $45, isn't really helpful to very many people at all, but also your own personal work. $45 might sound like a lot for you right now at this point in your career. If you are just getting started and you're excited to sign on and do the thing, or, $200 might seem like a lot, or depending on where in the world you are, it might sound like that's gonna make a huge difference in your income. However, what's the long-term sustainability of that? Can you continue to make patterns at this rate? Can you continue to get clients work at this rate? And how can you set yourself up for a long-term business at that rate? So considering some of those options can really help you get in the right frame of mind for figuring out those numbers. So how do I price my work when there are no hard and fast rules and everything looks like a calculus problem? Good question. I'm going to try to break it down for you a little bit, try to give some information around that. Again, this is not my favorite subject because I do feel like it's kind of personal, and and we're all trying to move up in the world. So I don't want to give you some sort of flagpole that you feel like you have to be tethered to. And the truth be told, for a very long time, now I've been freelancing for about 10 years. And for 7 or 8 years, I relied on the basic parameters of what design studios sold their work for. So design studios provide a ton of artwork to companies, and they sell their patterns and illustrations at a relatively standard prices outright. All right. So outright, of course, with licensing versus outright, things are a whole different conversation. But if you're selling your work with all your rights, and you're not going to own that anymore, that's called selling it outright, which is what design studios do. And those standard prices can range from $450 to $1,200, depending on industry and complexity of pattern, and again, a number of factors. So I know that's a really wide range, but if you wanted to zero in on numbers, 5 years ago, I probably would have told you sell a design for $600 for apparel, $700 for stationery, and maybe $800 for home decor. That's probably what I would have told you. So I've taken those numbers and worked around them in the past. I've considered some of those other factors, those traditional factors we've talked about, and sort of gone up or maybe slightly down from there, and worked around that. But those are kind of the basis of where I have priced my work in the past. The reason I won't commit to those numbers is because they haven't changed for decades, and they really aren't that fair or sustainable in the long term for independent artists. So I don't know if you've noticed, but first of all, the cost of living has definitely gone up in decades, especially recently, where the grocery store is selling eggs for $5 near me, but also as an independent artist, these numbers made sense to me when I worked in-house as a salaried employee. Even in New York City, I was a salaried employee, and so all I had to concentrate on was making patterns and illustrations and coloring things up and presentations. And I wasn't concentrating on marketing myself. I had, paid, because I was a salary employee, I had benefits, I had paid time off, I had all that stuff. When you're an independent artist, you don't have those things. And if you get sick and can't create art for 2 months for because of your illness or because of some other extraneous factors, then suddenly your income stops. If your income is based on every time I create work, I get $500 or whatever it is. So it's not sustainable for independent artists. As business owners, we are responsible for pushing those numbers up in any way we can. And unfortunately, we're often put in the position of trying to justify our need for more via licensing or adjusting our buyout fees based on the numbers of unit produced, etc. Having to have all those traditional factors and say, well, if you're doing this, then I'm going to push my number up this way and blah, blah, blah. And there's all this calculus involved because we have to justify why our numbers aren't the same as a design studio's numbers. So what's my advice now? Well, I'm going to provide you with some resources because, again, this isn't my favorite subject. I'm going to definitely provide you with some resources. I got a lot, especially in the blog that goes along with this video, but even in the description here, I have information on resources for pricing. But I do know that you're going to take them with a grain of salt because your own perspective and your own money mindset come into play. And so I personally never draw any hard lines in the sand on pricing. You're not going to hear me say that, oh, if you're not charging $400 for a pattern, you're committing a crime against the industry. That's just not my style. We all have to start where we're comfortable. But what you will hear me recommend over and over, so get out your notebook, get ready to embroider this on a pillow, is that no matter where you start, you have to make a habit of consistently raising your prices. This is so key. Just because the industry hasn't changed their pricing in 20 years doesn't mean that you have to. And that's where that range comes from, even for design studios. While raising it with new clients is definitely the easiest. So like every time you get a new client, quoting 10 to 25% higher with each new client until you start getting more no's than yeses, right? It's okay to get some no's as you try things out. Obviously, some clients aren't going to have that budget, but when you start hearing mostly no's, that's when okay, maybe I need to dial it down a little bit. But you also need to raise your prices with repeat clients. The beauty of this industry is that because the work is, products consistently need art. So if you make a connection with a client who creates, fabric or creates makeup bags or whatever, every season, twice a year, 4 times a year, 6 times a year, they need new art for their products. And so you're going to have repeat clients, which is exciting and wonderful. What makes it tricky is when you've quoted that initial pricing, then to change that down the road feels really, really tricky, but we need to do that. After working on a number of projects with the client, you are more of an asset. You work faster, you understand the product better, you know what they need, you set up their templates perfectly because you've learned it. You're taking less time out of their day for them to help you out and guide you along than they used to have to do when you first started working with them. You are a better partner and you deserve a pay increase for that. So build that confidence, work on that mindset, and raise your prices. All right, I want to talk to you briefly about some common resources I've relied on. I actually have a much longer list of courses and resources on the blog, some which I have used myself, some which I have heard amazing things about. So I really encourage you to go to the blog to learn more, but I just want to highlight some of my favorites on this video. The first and the thing that also you will probably hear a lot about when you are asking in various service pattern groups about pricing, you're going to hear the number one most thing you're going to hear is it depends. And the second most common answer is check the gag guide. All right. And if you're wondering what the heck is the gag guide, it's the Graphic Artists Guild's Pricing and Ethical Guidelines Handbook. All right. This is sort of the OG. It has an entire section devoted to surface pattern design, which is really amazing because, as you might have realized, surface pattern design is kind of like the forgotten stepchild of art. People don't know about it. It's kind of hidden. This book is really worth it. This is approximately, I don't know, I've seen it from different pricing, $30 to $45, maybe even $50, but it is worth it. They come out with a new edition every 2 to 3 years. It is not the most important thing to have the most up-to-date edition. Obviously, it's useful to be up to date, but if you have, this is the 16th edition that's currently on the market as of 2023. I think later in 2023, it's possible the 17th edition is coming out. I have contributed to this guide year after year, but I will say that, you know, it's really great because it has not just surface pattern design pricing, but all kinds of art pricing, lots of creative business advice and contracts in here. So this is really a definite must own, but the wide range of numbers that you'll find in the surface pattern design area of this book, somehow it's both not specific enough and too specific, right? You'll see when you look at the charts, there's like these breakdowns of like, you know, 4 colors, working freelance in the office for, like, it's super specific, but then it's like plus or minus like from $50 to $200 an hour or something like that, or like $25 to $200 an hour. So it's kind of, it is a little bit awkward to use as like your Bible for pricing, but it's a great place to start for sure. Second thing I always recommend is join the Fair Pricing for Surface Designers Facebook group. This is a wonderful group where people are willing to contribute and give their advice. And again, you might get a lot of it depends, but do the best you can. I really, really recommend before you even ask your question, be sure to search previous discussions because chances are something similar has already been addressed. Also, check out the group resource files. So if you see along the top, there's guides, there's featured, there's media, there's files, all of that stuff, all of those things. There are resources there like pricing surveys and anonymous pricing information. So all that stuff lives there. Check it out. And then you see that little magnifying glass along the top. That is where you can search for topics. So if you search like apparel or, book covers, or that's not really surface design, but you understand, right? So take a search and see what people are talking about to get a better idea. So as I said on the blog, I have a lot more resources. I really recommend going to the description and clicking over to the blog where I have 4 more resources that are really wonderful courses, guides, workshops, all that stuff. Some, really a wide range of pricing. Some is free, some is very inexpensive, and some are more in depth. But I also wanted to provide you with some mindset reads because, as I said, mindset is such a big part of it. So one of my favorites is You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. This obviously is not exclusive to surface design. It's just about figuring out your money stories and why you think, what you think about money, and that will help put you in the frame of mind for making money. And similar vibes, maybe less badass, is Overcoming Under-Earning by Barbara Stanny. And this is a really great book for, sort of explaining why and diving into why you may be undervaluing the work that you give to the world. So one of the resources you'll find on the blog is from Jessica Heish, and it's called The Dark Art of Pricing. And there is a reason why she's called it the dark art. We're not trying to hide in the shadows anymore. I think we're all being a lot more open in this industry about what's going on with pricing. But like in my case, it's like I'm happy to be super transparent, but there is no like easy answer because it's so dependent on your personal boundaries, your confidence, your mindset, privilege, the industry, where you are in the world, like the companies, the type of companies you're working with, there are just so many factors, unfortunately. And I wish there was an easy solution or a quick calculator because I love to simplify things. But as with everything in entrepreneurship, it's about starting somewhere, trying and then trying again something different if it doesn't work. It's about learning from your mistakes, moving forward. You will get more confident as you do it more, and you'll come around and then you'll second guess. Like, I'm relatively confident in my pricing, but that doesn't mean that it's not hard for me, or it is what it is, right? It's just part of the game. You just do what you have to do and you hope for the best. And as you carve out your own prices, you'll raise them again, hopefully again and again throughout your career. But you are amazing. You can do this, and I am cheering for you. So I hope that this video has helped you with understanding why pricing is so tricky and given you some things to consider as you work on figuring out the right prices for your business. Head to elizabethsilver.com/learn if you want more straightforward support with surface pattern design and creative business. Learn all about how to create successful licensing collections, how to build your surface pattern design business, how to quickly get a pitch out to a potential client, or how to use Adobe Bridge. And be sure to check out some targeted help I have with portfolios and my free workshop ready for surface pattern clients. There's a lot to see at elizabethsilver.com/learn.